You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group.
The easiest thing to do this Monday the 7th is to stand here and make a whole load of funny comments, jokes, and have a laugh. But this particular Monday, the way the markets are crashing, it's not the time for a laugh or a joke, because this is going to affect some people in a really serious way. I would ask if there is anybody who has any level of financial advice or expertise, please, in the comment section now, with regards of there are going to be people who are worried about their 401s, what they should do about that. Others are going to be, if they have investments, is now the time to get out? Is now the time in terms of the dip? These are all things, so please, if anybody has any financial advice at all, comment section. The other thing which I do not understand is, if you are President of the United States of America, surely you have access to call upon the biggest and best financial brains anywhere. So how does Trump end up with Lutnick and Navarro? And it's not because Navarro was locked up previously. He just seems clueless. Like basics. I mean, it says something that Elon Musk is just calling out Navarro. Yet Navarro is the brain, supposedly, behind the trade war. World War Fee, as I dubbed it. But as I said, I don't want to make any jokes. And then this guy, Harold Lutnick, who I don't know what his political background is, but is suddenly, what is he, finance secretary, something like that, just out of his depth, says one thing, he is the classic example. There's a book called The Endless Step, which is about the Russian planes. I'm not making this up. It's where the phrase, one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. That is Howard Lutnick. Now, if this was just him giving family financial advice, fair enough. But he's the person that's given the president this advice, I think, which has led the whole world economically to be in a fragile state. And if I see one more person, this is how the MAGAs are spinning it, saying, oh, well, it's just people who have stocks and shares, the average person it won't affect. Okay. I think the trickle down, or whatever word you say, will eventually affect stability. It definitely is going to affect prices. And it clearly will mean that jobs could potentially be lost. This is not a joke. I appreciate the individual at Fox will be spinning it. The craziest thing about all of this, if we go back to President Biden, I'm old enough to remember when Biden was in charge, inflation was a dirty, dirty word. Now it's like, oh, a little bit of inflation, a little bit of pain. And again, the thing that pisses me and a lot of people off is those that are giving out all of this chat. Do you think they're the ones that are really deep down suffering? Wondering about, say, insulin bills? Wondering about their 401s? Wondering about job security? I'll say one more time. If anybody has any level of financial know-how, please, just in the comment section below, 2 questions. Is it going to get any worse? And how do we get out of the mess we're in? Actually, a third question: who's to blame? Comment section is all yours. Thank you. And look after your money.
Good morning. President Trump's announcement of universal tariffs on the whole world, including the European Union, is a major blow to the world economy. I deeply regret this choice. Let's be clear-eyed about the immense consequences. The global economy will massively suffer. Uncertainty will spiral and trigger the rise of further protectionism. The consequences will be dire for millions of people around the globe, also for the most vulnerable countries, which are now subject to some of the highest US tariffs, the opposite of what we wanted to achieve. The tariffs will also hurt consumers around the world. It will be felt immediately. Millions of citizens will face higher grocery bills, medication will cost more, as well as transportation. Inflation will go up, and this is hurting in particular the most vulnerable citizens. All businesses, big and small, will suffer from day one, from greater uncertainty to the disruption of supply chains, to burdensome bureaucracy. The costs of doing business with the United States will drastically increase. And what is more, there seems to be no order in the disorder, no clear path through the complexity and chaos that is being created as all US trading partners are hit. In the past 80 years, trade between the European Union and the United States has created millions of jobs. Consumers across the Atlantic have benefited from reduced prices. Businesses have benefited from huge opportunities, leading to unprecedented growth and prosperity. And at the same time, we know that the global trading system has serious deficiencies. I agree with President Trump that others are taking unfair advantage of the current rules, and I'm ready to support any efforts to make the global trading system fit for the realities of the global economy. But I also want to be clear. Reaching for tariffs as your first and last tool will not fix it. This is why, from the outset, we have always been ready to negotiate with the United States to remove the remaining barriers to transatlantic trade. At the same time, we are prepared to respond. We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel, and we're now preparing for further countermeasures to protect our interests and our businesses if negotiations fail. We will also be watching closely what indirect effects these tariffs could have, because we cannot absorb global overcapacity, nor will we accept dumping on our markets. As Europeans, we will always promote and defend our interests and our values, and we will always stand up for Europe. But there is an alternative path. It is not too late to address concerns through negotiations. This is why our Trade Commissioner, Maroš Šefčovič, is permanently engaged with his US counterparts. We will work towards reducing barriers, not raising them. So let's move from confrontation to negotiation. Finally, I would like to speak directly to my fellow Europeans. I know that many of you feel let down by our oldest ally. Yes, we must brace for the impact that this will inevitably have. Europe has everything it needs to make it through the storm. We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us. So we will stand together and stand up for each other. Our unity is our strength. Europe has the largest single market in the world, 450 million consumers. That is our safe harbor in tumultuous times. And Europe will stand at the side of those directly impacted. We have already announced new measures to support the steel and cars sectors. Last week, we limited the amount of steel that can be imported to Europe tariff-free. This will give more breathing space to these strategic industries. Now, we will also convene strategic dialogues with the steel, the automotive, and the pharmaceutical sectors, and others will follow. Europe stands together for our business, for our citizens, and for all Europeans, and we will continue to build bridges with all those that, like us, care about fair and rules-based trade as a basis for shared prosperity. Thank you.
I think there's reason to be optimistic right now.
I mean, Anna, I just want to point out how crazy it is that when we first started talking at the beginning of this show, the markets were down like 1.5%. And in that time, we have flipped not only into the green, but markedly in the green. The S&P 500 is now up over 3%. So in the course of, I guess it was 10 minutes or so, we have seen this rocketing up of the stock market. I do think that in an environment like this, when there's so much volatility, there can be kind of this springboard action of, you know, rapid down days and then rapid up days as well. But to see this intraday is pretty crazy. The NASDAQ is now up over 4%. I'm not sure if there's a specific headline that is the reason for this. We heard Ron just a few minutes ago say that perhaps there could be some sort of conversation with the European Union about negotiation. The commentary that we had heard from the administration was very confusing over the weekend. There were a number of officials that went on the Sunday shows. You had Howard Lutnick on CBS Face the Nation saying that these tariffs could be in place for weeks, that they were not going anywhere. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, speaking to our Meet the Press's Kristen Walker, saying that there could be some conversations, but he didn't explicitly say if there actually were open for negotiations. So this is all very confusing, but the markets are very sensitive right now, and it seems like we could end the day any which way direction at this point, because we got, what, like less than 6 hours until market close, so
yeah,
anything could happen. But it is a roller coaster.
Again. You just don't know. Jared, let me ask you what your take is on this market up, down, and what it all means.
Well, I think that this level of volatility in the markets, and by the way, there's a measure for this. It's called the VIX. Market folks call it the fear index. It doesn't just get better when the markets go up. It represents precisely the kind of volatility we're seeing. It is through the roof. It is setting records, and that's a bad thing for any businesses that are thinking about investing in this climate. Now, look, it is great that the markets are turning up, and it's interestingly, about 10 minutes ago, my wife was asking me, what should we do? Because, you know, we have retirement accounts. And I said, well, it probably wouldn't take much from the administration to get the markets to reverse course. I've never seen such sensitivity really based on just one guy. I guess it's the team, but it's really one guy. And of course, I'm talking about the president. And if he says things, if he signals that tariffs are going to get a little bit better, markets, you know, reflect that. They start to improve. So tremendous sensitivity, as Ryan was saying, but also we are far from out of the woods here because we have a few minutes of the markets on the upswing.
I mean, we have heard from multiple administration officials that they are in conversations with many leaders, something like 50 world leaders we've heard thrown around, trying to negotiate before those higher tariffs kick in on April 9th this week. And European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has also talked about targeting the big tech industry in terms of retaliatory tariffs, saying the EU holds a lot of cards. What do you see as the big risk or U.S. vulnerability from potential EU retaliation?
I think that's very, very significant. Most people don't know the following. We have a significant trade surplus with the European Union, not on goods. On goods, we have a deficit. on services. When it comes to services, we sell them a lot more than they sell to us. Financial services, tech services, some of our very high-end services, insurance services. So they could, if they wanted to, they could really hurt high-end American producers in that space. Now, it would also hurt their consumers, so it's a double-edged sword for them. But I'm wondering if exactly what you just said, Anna, that there is starting to be some negotiations around the reciprocal part of these tariffs that are giving the administration some kind of an off-ramp, because what the global economy needs right now is for Trump to have an off-ramp. And I don't think we see a pervasive one in that sense, but I think we may see some signals of that.
And Jared, Kevin Hassett, who's an economic advisor for President Trump, was just asked in a Fox interview about the potential of a 90-day pause, an idea that was thrown out there by Bill Ackerman. Of course, he's a billionaire hedge fund guy who is a backer of Donald Trump. He had thrown this out in an X post this weekend. And Kevin Hassett, when he was asked about it, didn't say no. What does that tell you?
Well, for one thing, it tells me that Kevin is, I think, on the inside trying to do the right thing here and pull this stuff back, add some rationalization, some actually grounded economic thinking into what they're doing. I'll tell you another thing it tells me. This is so vastly unpopular, this trade war, that, you know, folks on this station and folks at the Wall Street Journal are all equally inveighing against it. Trump has no friends here. He is isolated. His billionaire buddies are telling him, even Elon Musk is saying this is a problem. So if you can give him an off-ramp, maybe he'll take it. Now, he's been dug in, he's been doubling and tripling down, but I guess the market sniffs some kind of a potential off-ramp for him here. And if that's true, it's good for the global economy and for the markets.
I do want to play what Elon Musk said over the weekend, who is, you know, obviously a big advisor to the president on his team right now, but he is publicly saying that he's advising President Trump otherwise, the exact opposite of what we're seeing with these tariffs. Take a listen.
I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America. That has certainly been my advice to the president.
Zero tariffs, free trade zone. Do you think that's where this could all end up?
Anna, if that's where this all ends up, I will come on your show and profusely apologize to the Trump administration. I would be extremely surprised, because I think that they are, I mean, anyone who's followed them knows that that's the last thing that they're interested in. Trump says tariffs are his favorite thing in the world. They view the trade deficit as a scorecard in which we're scoring bad. There's no substantive or empirical economics to support any of those assertions, but that's what's in their head. That's what comprises the false reality that has gotten us into this mess. I hear a lot of people from Musk to Ackman all saying, hey, put aside your false reality and join the real world. Look at what the global markets are telling you. And thus far, many members in the administration, especially Trump himself, by far the most important, is saying, no, we like it here inside our separate reality, inside our weird glass enclosure. And so it's pretty hard to get them out. Now, maybe markets this morning are seeing something I'm not, but it's a great concern.
Well, we don't know what's happening with the markets, because as we've been talking, they were in the positive to start our conversation, and now they're back down again in the negative. I can tell you the Dow is down hundreds of points, and you can see how that translates in terms of percentages.
I just want to be clear.
You don't have that kind of power?
I don't think I did that. I just want to say.
You don't want to be blamed, right? Thank you, Jared Bernstein. Appreciate your conversation. Thank you for joining us. And still ahead, billionaire blowback as one of the president's wealthy allies warns of, quote, economic nuclear war. And deadline day to